Third POV. Upon Nizu's permission, Mei pressed the play button to start the next video. Throughout Death Battle, we've seen all manner of weapons and abilities, but these two combatants command the very earth around them. Began the video. Yep, earth power. Pixie Bob exclaimed proudly. Who here is with me in the Earth Power Club? The only people to raise their hands were Hananuki and Cementos, though the latter did so reluctantly to play along with the woman's enthusiasm. The closest thing I have to any power over the earth is just breaking it with my shockwaves. Jiro shrugged. I'd like to raise my hand, but my hardening just makes me as hard as a rock. Not actually one. Kirishima nervously chuckled. What about that guy from Ketsubutsu? The one that looked like Midoriya? Kaminari asked. He said his hero name was Quake, right? Yeah, but his quirk was creating shockwaves using some vibration quirk, not actually controlling the earth, Zero answered. Gaara of the Desert. Boomstick revealed the first fighter. And Toph Beifong, the blind bandit, was revealed the second. Blind bandit. Choji blinked. So she's blind. Her eyes do look faded, Momo muttered. I wonder if she uses some other method to see. He's Wiz and I'm Boomstick. Boomstick introduced themselves. And it's our job to analyze their weapons, armor, and skills to find out who would win a death battle. Wiz finished the intro. The first fighter was the more noticeably intimidating of the two combatants. From the scenes shown, the boy appeared to be around his teenage years, with his oldest appearance as a young adult. The boy was pale, skinny, and short for his age, with short, messy, red hair, pale blue eyes, and what looked like perpetual guy liner constantly around his eyes. He always held a serious, cold frown, a red kanji tattooed on the left side of his forehead that had the students of Class 1A glancing subconsciously toward a certain hot and cold classmate. The boy seemed to wear different types of robes and clothes, the most consistent elements being white robes and a large, cracked gourd, seemingly made of clay, slung over his back constantly. Gaara of the Desert is a short, skinny, pale stick of a kid, was started. But he's also one of the deadliest shinobi in the world. Shinobi. Pony quirked her head. It means ninja, Shoto answered her. Shinobi is a title reserved for male ninjas, while female ninjas are normally called kunoichi. Oh, that's cool, Pony smiled, blushing slightly at her crush's gaze. Oh, hear that, Edgy? Hawks asked, grinning teasingly at Edgeshot. Another ninja fighter. Just like us. If I had not been introduced to Deadpool, I would have said you are the most loathsome, irritating fool I've ever met, the shinobi hero growled. Ah, thank you, Hawks cooed, still grinning. He looks like a member of Green Day, Boomstick muttered, pairing an image of Gaara with the band's members. Was that a band? Zero scratched his head in confusion. I can't remember when they were from. Yep, they were a rock band formed during the late 1980s, before the dawning of quirks. Jiro grinned at the sight of one of her favorite bands. The name was slang where they came from in the Bay Area for smoking marijuana all day. What's marijuana? Eri tilted her head curiously. Jiro froze awkwardly. W will tell you about it when you are older. Just don't accept it if anyone gives it to you, okay? Izuku responded fatherly. Okay. Eri nodded, smiling dutifully. Izuku sighed. Anyway, if I remember correctly, Green Day was known for influencing and expanding the concept of punk rock, raising awareness of social and environmental issues, and making politically charged music like American Idiot, Izuku continued. They're one of my favorite bands. Oh, I wonder why you like them so much, Greenie. Setsuna grinned teasingly while ruffling Izuku's hair, making the boy blush. I remember Green. Jiro smiled wide, a slight blush on her cheeks. Remember when we quizzed each other on how many songs they made? Yeah, you mopped the floor with me, Jiro. Izuku chuckled, scratching his cheek nervously as he remembered how they bonded over their music. It happened one day when Jiro invited him to her room to help her organize her music notes for the school festival. He had seen her Green Day poster on her open closet door, and they just hit it off from there. Hey, you remember that, but not calling me Kyoka? Jiro pouted as she poked at his head with her jack. Sorry Keikyoka, Izuku muttered. Better, green. Jiro grinned, blushing. Mineta watched this all with growing frustration and jealousy. He's even nailing Jiro and a girl from 1B. Mineta wailed internally. Mineta may not have been as attracted to Jiro as he was to the other girls for obvious reasons, but the fact that Izuku was rizzing up almost every girl in their class and even expanding his talents to girls outside of theirs frustrated Mineta on principle if not actual jealousy. He was also jealous that Midoriya seemed to be scoring the hottest girl in class 1B. If I find out he's also rizzed up Hagakure, or God forbid Kendo, I'm gonna lose it. Gaara is the son of the 4th Kozakage, leader of the village hidden in the sand, was revealed, showcasing Gaara's infamous father, his mother's death, and the lonely young boy walking around alone at night. Born prematurely at the cost of his mother's life, Gaara was destined for a childhood of depression and loneliness from the get-go. A wave of sadness washed over the group as they witnessed the event. Eri and Kuta whimpered in their respective ways, but both were brought into a hug by Izuku. Kuta had lost his mother and father to muscular, and Eri lost her father, unaware of her quirk's part in the act, was abandoned by her mother, and had her grandfather placed into a coma, thanks to overhaul. Izuku knew the pain of living with a father abandoning him and his mother, and knew how horrible it was to watch someone die in front of them, and he could only send his sympathies to the boy who lost his mother before he could even know her. Shoto's grip on the couch's armrest tightened while his face grew sad and reflective. He may not have lost his mother to death, but he had spent most of his life without one. His mother was placed in a mental after she had burned his face. It was his eldest brother, Tuya, that he had lost before he could truly know him, both things he had attributed to endeavor. His other siblings, Natsuo and Fuyumi, tried their best to be there for him, with the latter forced to act as the closest thing to a mother he had, and the former as a supportive older brother. Still, Shoto always felt guilt at how fast both of them were forced to grow up because of his weakness and their father's cruelty and poor choices. Thanks even further to his father's reputation as the then number 2, Shoto isolated himself from people outside his family, seeing them as the sycophants they were. Shoto's first friend outside of his siblings was Izuku, and soon after the rest of his friend group. Not even a minute old and already has a kill under his belt, Boomstick joked. Pony noticed Shoto's change in demeanor shift from sadness to anger and heard his knuckles crack. The horned 1B girl stared at him sadly and with concern. How insensitive, Momo gasped, offended on Gaara's behalf. Though, technically he had a little help, Boomstick pointed out, garnering the group's immediate attention. Because you see, as he was being born, his father was like, hey, you know what'd be awesome? Using ninja magic to seal a horrible monster in my son's belly to turn him into an ultimate weapon. So, his father was the one responsible for killing Gaara's mother. Uraraka gasped. Endeavor flinched and could tell his son's anger was only rising with every similar fact. And he couldn't blame his son. Enji Todoroki may not have murdered his wife, but it was thanks to his negligence, obsession, and the pressure he put on Tuya that resulted in his eldest son's death. And the frustration he took out onto his wife was what led her to grow more mentally unstable and burn their youngest child and sent the poor woman into that mental hospital. In a way similar to this, Gaara's father had cursed and tormented Rei's life from the minute they met, forcing the woman into a quirk marriage and treating her as a baby-making factory for the perfect child than his wife or the mother of his children. Gaara let out an agonizing, tearful scream as tendrils of sand rushed and seeped into him. The process was successful and Gaara became a Jinchuriki, human beings who have powerful tailed beasts trapped within them, was explained. Gaara's beast was Shikaku, a giant tanuki with power over sand. A human with a monstrous beast inside them. Revelry in the dark, Tokoyami said with both fascination and dread. So, this is how Gaara obtained his earth powers, more specifically that of sand, Jirota muttered, cupping his chin while imagining his quirk as a raging, rampaging beast he has to keep in check. The monster is a tanuki. But they are so adorable, Mina cooed. I know, right? Hagakure agreed, nodding her invisible head rapidly. With their bushy tails, cute little ears and fluffy fur. Ah, I want a tanuki as a pet, Boomstick cooed, a regular tanuki shown on screen. "They're so fluffy and adorable, you just wanna who dash." He was caught off as the true appearance of Shikaku appeared. "Oh god, holy, what is that? Ayaha!" Mina and Hagakure wailed in fright at the monstrous tanuki, hiding behind the couches near them. "Whoa, that looks so cool." Kuta gasped with the enthusiasm of a giant monster-loving boy. Eri followed Mina's and Hagakure's lead and hid behind Izuku's legs. Hawks frowned at seeing the giant monster. From its menacing maw to its monstrous size, to Kigo, it looked like a more animalistic version of Shigaraki's pet monster, Gigantomachia. The winged hero had seen the beast for the first time during Shigaraki's coronation as the Grand Commander of the PLF. If it weren't for the fact that the League had control of a 1,000-member-strong army of radicalized zealots, or that there was an army of radicalized zealots at all, Gigantomachia would have been one that chilled him to the bone. Background: 19. Full title: Gaara of the Sand Waterfall. Birth date: January 19th. Blood type: AB. Son of the 4th Kazekage. Host of Shikaku. Brother to Temari and Hankuro. 5th Kazekage. Shikaku loathed humanity and at first, Gaara had difficulties controlling the monster's rage, accidentally hurting others. Was explained Gaara's backstory, showing the monstrous-tailed beast and Gaara's people shunning him. As such, he was shunned by his own people, forced to live a secluded life. While Izuku did his best to soothe Eri from her fear of the humanity-hating monster, Izuku couldn't help but flinch. He knew all too well the feeling of seclusion and isolation from his peers because he was different, even dangerous to some. Hell, some kids he tried to befriend avoided him because they thought they would end up quirkless if they were around him like it was a disease. "Well yeah, I mean he's got a goddamn tummy monster," Boomstick commented. "It's not like Pepto-Bismol solving that." Oyama shuddered. The flamboyant boy already faced tummy issues when using his quirk. He didn't know how he would survive if he also had to deal with a horrible sand demon in his stomach. Convinced his only option was to fight and care for only himself, Gaara became a ruthless killing machine, was revealed, showing Gaara kill a man and brand a kanji out of blood on his forehead. "What does that kanji say?" Pony questioned, blinking with concern over whether it was truly made of blood. "It means love," Edgeshot said, closing his eyes and bowing his head sympathetically. It must represent the lack of such affection and emotion from his people and father, the love he never experienced from his mother in person, and perhaps as a reminder of his struggles and ultimate goals. Shoto flinched as he saw the look of hatred and pain in Gaara's eyes and the bloody tattoo, his left hand subconsciously touching his scarred flesh. For so long, he had seen this scar as a testament to his hatred of his father and his rejection of his father's power and blood, the blood and power that his mother found so unbearable to look at. Seeing another person suffer in a circumstance similar to his, even if the mark was seemingly self-inflicted, was jarring to him, and Todoroki sent nothing but his sympathies for the boy. Arsenal. Fan Gourd. Johio Rope Dart. Gold Dust. Futsu. Ceiling Tag. But it's not all bad. Having a digestive desert demon gives him control over all things sand, Boomstick noted. Gaara was shown encasing a foe in sand, then crushing him into bloody pieces, as well as flying. He can wield it as a weapon using his mind to trap and crush his foes. Oh, and he can also use it to freaking fly. How the hell does that work? His quirk reminds me of the late Snatch's quirk, Cementos commented. May his soul rest in peace. Endeavor and Ryukyu frowned as they remembered the late hero's demise at the hands of Dabi and Mr. Compress of the League. After the successful raid of the Hasaikai base and the defeat of their boss, Overhaul's transport was reportedly intercepted by the League of Villains, the descriptions from the surviving officers matching the patchworked pyrokinetic, the mask-wearing escape artist, and their leader Shigaraki. Snatch had been the hero safeguarding Chisaki and the 5 remaining quirk-erasing bullets. However, it was due to the combined efforts of Mr. Compress's and Dabi's quirks that ended the man's life. By the time reinforcements arrived, all they found was Chisaki mutilated and missing his arms, the quirk-erasing bullets gone, and Snatch's burnt, sizzling remains. When she heard the news, Ryukyu felt horrible guilt, wishing she had taken the lead on transporting Overhaul instead. If I was there, I could have helped and Snatch wouldn't have died in vain, Ryukyu had thought. Her senior sidekicks and Nijire were the only ones who knew about her guilt. None of them wanted Uraraka or Azui to see their mentor in such a state, and it was mainly thanks to her periwinkle-haired protege who managed to assuage her. Nijire reminded her that she had done her part in the raid and did her duty to secure Overhaul's lieutenants, especially Rikia Katsukane. But where Ryukyu had Nijire to cheer her up, Endeavor did not have much of anyone to truly absolve him of his guilt. At least, anyone he would allow to look past the mask of the stoic, serious pro-hero he maintained. While he hadn't taken part in the Hasaikai raid, or had much interaction with the Sand Quirk hero, he had the opportunity to bring in one of his murderers, Dabi, who appeared after Hood's attack. If I hadn't been so weak, I could have captured him and stopped his murder streak, Enji Todoroki thought, his fists cracking as Dabi's taunts echoed in his head. While the heroes busied themselves over their guilt, the students looked at Gaara's abilities more optimistically and analytically. Tokoyami imagined containing a villain with dark shadow like Gaara did with his sand, minus squishing said villain into a bloody paste. Meanwhile, Reiko hummed in acknowledgement at how Gaara flew with his sand as she did with whatever large enough object she could control and lift. He can mentally adjust the density of his sand, whether it needs to be lighter than air or stronger than steel, was explained the reach of Gaara's control over the element. He can even use it to stop bombs powerful enough to wipe out an entire village. Manly, Kirishima and Tetsutetsu muttered, wondering how well their respective quirks, hardening and steel body, would fare against Gaara's sand. Todoroki blinked at the sight of Gaara creating a wall of sand to protect an entire village, wondering if this was how people saw him when he made his heavens-piercing ice walls. To be able to manipulate the very density of every molecule of sand is quite impressive, Momo said. Could you do something similar with your quirk, Yamamo? Izuku asked curiously. Momo blinked, surprised by the question. What do you mean, Izuku? Momo asked. I mean, it is already incredible that you can memorize the structure of an item you create down to the molecular level. But have you ever tried lessening the materials required to form an item? Izuku inquisitively asked. You know, to mitigate the amount of lipids you would need to use your quirk and reserve more for later? That does sound promising, and I have attempted something similar in the past, Momo admitted, though her face was pensive and uncertain. However, even the slightest miscalculation could cause my quirk to fail to produce the item. I would have to experiment with that idea more before I can put it to practical use. Well, I guess it's a good thing we have a private training session to try that idea, right? Izuku grinned cheekily. Momo blushed yet smiled softly back. Yes, we do, Momo replied, her enthusiasm for tomorrow only growing. The two were too busy gazing into each other's eyes to notice a certain grape-headed teen overhearing their conversation rather closely. He can control any sand in his vicinity using his chakra, a spiritual energy shinobi access for superhuman abilities, such as walking up a tree, was explained the famous Naruto chakra. Interesting, Mandalay said. Its relation as a spiritual energy source makes it sound similar to Ki from the Dragon Ball universe, but its applications appear more like magic. Guess Boomstick was right to call it ninja magic, Miruko chuckled. Think you can try and do that, Edge Shot? Just because I walk the way of the shinobi does not mean I would have any further success in harnessing such power, if it exists in our world, than anyone else, Edge Shot replied. Sounds like a long-winded way of saying, I'm too chicken shit to try. Miruko rolled her eyes, taking a bite out of her carrot. Edge Shot gained a comical angry tick mark over his head. Utsu. Armor of sand. Shield of sand. Third eye. Desert wave. Sand binding coffin. Sand binding prison. Sand clone. Sand hail. Sand shuriken. This guy's like the ultimate emo kid, Boomstick muttered. But I'm not gonna give him too much crap, because he can use existing sand to crush the ground around him for even more sand. So he's never without easy access to ammo. Quite the ingenious tactic, Cementos nodded, arms crossed. I I don't face much issue with this circumstance since our cities are brim with cement for me to utilize. Same, Pixie Bob smirked. If there is any kind of earth for me to touch, it's mine to turn into mud to control. Though using earth and mud to make more to use later sounds like quite the big brain play. Though, this highlights that the range of his abilities is limited to exclusively sand rather than all kinds of dirt and earth, Tiger pointed out. And if there's no sand nearby to use, he'll have to prioritize creating some on top of fighting. Sounds like that can make him vulnerable in a death battle if he's not in the right place to fight, Ragdoll said. Despite this, he still carries a gigantic gourd of sand on his back, Boomstick pointed out. I suppose that solves the issue of having sand nearby for readied use, Mount Lady shrugged. But there would have to be only a limited amount in the gourd, despite its impressive size, Ryukyu noted. Meaning he would have to memorize and use as his sand as scarcely and wisely as he can. It's huge. You'd think that'd be hard on his spine, was muttered. Interestingly enough, its unique shape and size is a reference to how in Japanese folklore, tanukis were considered to be so well endowed they'd have to sling their testicles over their shoulders. Awesome! Boomstick's grin was notable, even from just his voice. More like gross, Uraraka gagged, covering Aries' eyes from the mature paintings. What was that you said about the kid's gourd size being impressive? Miruko grinned teasingly. Oh, quite you. You know what I meant. Ryukyu huffed, yet her face still grew red. Does that happen if you tried tanuki meat, Tamaki? Mirio asked. And no, Tamaki gagged, his face turning green. I have never tried either tanuki meat or using my quirk like that. Could one of Zuzu's family members be part tanuki? Mijire wondered to herself. She distinctly remembered when Mei told the newly formed sisterhood about how endowed their crush was, to their mixed reactions of delight and apprehension, yet she wondered if the same held true for Zuzu's testis. The more she thought about it, the more Nijire began to drool and bleed from her nose. Izuku didn't know why, but he felt his ears burn crimson, wondering if someone was talking or thinking about him about something really embarrassing. But the thing is, Gaara's gourd is not carrying any ordinary testicles, I mean sand. Wiz corrected himself. Gaara has infused his own chakra into the gourd sand. This directly links it to Gaara, making it much easier for him to control. Boomstick jumped in, showing Gaara create a spear made of sand, burying his foe in quicksand, and zooming into a person's bleeding wounds to show the particles of sand in the bloodstream. He's so skilled with it, he can even forge weapons from it, bury people underground, or send it into another person's bloodstream and control them like some sort of puppet. Talk about an itch you're not gonna scratch. Shinso quirked an eyebrow at the last feat, which sounded like a roundabout version of his quirk, except with more precision and control if Gaara could manipulate every grain of sand. My quirk can only get them to do certain simple tasks. Nothing too complex that would require a higher brainwave function that would be rendered numb and sluggish. Additionally, a strong enough physical response like bumping shoulders with someone could snap them out of the trance. Shinso thought over how his quirk worked. But this Gaara could probably manipulate their bodies like puppets on his strings with no care about how damaging and painful the task could be, or how the control process would feel. Shinso would almost dare to call it villainous. Shinso shook his head at the thought. The indigo-haired teen found it hypocritical to be quick to judge the sand wielder over such stereotypical preconceptions that he was subjected similarly to, especially when he has seen multiple individuals across universes with similar brainwashing powers, like Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter. Remind me of when that mummy guy from Naboo Island sicked those puppets of his on us. Kaminari shuddered, remembering the mummification villain from Nine's crew. Bakugu growled with anger at the memory of that bastard, specifically when said mummy bastard bound him in his bindings and used him as a puppet to fight Shitty Hair and Sparkplug. No one controls me but me, Bakugu growled. What about you, Reiko? Tatsuna asked. Can you do an actual poltergeist and control people's bodies? What you describe is the vile acts of a demonic possession, you uncultured reptile, Reiko huffed defensively. My quirk allows me to control objects and levitate and toss them around, yet moving another person's body against their will would require a level of precision I have yet to master. Uncultured, Setsuna exclaimed, slightly offended. While they discussed Gaara's puppeteering abilities, Todoroki's envious mind fixated on Gaara's constructive control of sand. Unlike Gaara, Shoto's control over his quirk was far more limited. The scarred teen could unleash and spread out fire and ice and consequently cool and heat his body and surroundings. Yet to specifically create structures and shapes out of his ice, he needed a base structure to work with and spread his ice to make. At most, he could form blades, spires, glaciers, and ice walls, while Gaara could make weapons, more precise bindings and shields. Then there was Shoto's fire, which was too chaotic and wild to shape into something physical or tangible without it being a superheated ball of fire. Also, Gaara eventually battled and defeated his own father, who happened to be a zombie at the time, was revealed. Sorry, come again? Kendo asked, blinking at the quick, sudden revelation. It's like Ivy Valentine and her zombie pirate father all over again. Except this time, he's a ninja, Tetsu muttered. And both evil bastards, Yui added, remembering how Ivy's father was a rapist and murderer on top of being a pirate. His father used a magnetic release ability to control gold dust, much like Gaara does sand, was continued. The fourth Kazekage shown controlling golden sand with ease. Like a mirror opposite of his son's power, Ibara muttered, hands clasped in prayer to rid the world of such an unholy plague as the undead. Though good for the guy, Tokage grinned. Finally got even with his old man for monster possession thing and killing his mother. Endeavor and Shoto heard her comment and cringed at the irony of their similar, yet less extreme circumstances. Even though he can't do the zombie dad magnet thing, Gaara added gold dust to his gourd sand anyway, giving him more control over its weight, Boomstick explained. Intriguing, Ida muttered. Was he able to do such a thing because the gold dust was similar to his own power? Who knows? Uraraka shrugged. Either way, I think it's really cool. Facing your evil father, reborn as a darker version of yourself, defeating him, and taking his powers to use for the good of others. You sure have a way of making things sound dramatic, huh, Ochiko-chan? Azui pointed out, making Ochiko blush. If you didn't want to be a hero, I would think you would be great as a writer. I think it's cute, Izuku muttered out loud. His face grew red as the words were finally processed as said out loud instead of in his head. I mean it's inspiring and shows how passionate you are about things, Ochiko-san. Thank you, Deku-kun, Uraraka stuttered, her blushing demeanor growing brighter. But wait, there's more, Wiz exclaimed. With her dying breath, Gaara's mother somehow imparted her own power into this sand. The screen showed the crying, dying mother holding her baby boy. It became living sand, an extension of her will, determined to follow and protect Gaara. The scene switched to a scene of Gaara floating in the air on a platform of sand, surrounded by sand in the shape of his mother. It will spring from the gourd to defend him from any danger, regardless of risk and without command. This information was exemplified by Gaara standing still, his arms crossed, as sand shot out in waves and tendrils to protect the boy against any threat. Todoroki's eyes grew wide, his jaw slacking. His thoughts turned back to his battle against Midoriya in the sports festival. How Midoriya snapped at him and said those fateful words that triggered the scarred boy's repressed memories of his mother. Todoroki remembered her comforting words, motherly wisdom, and love strengthening him, allowing him to come to terms with his past and identity as his own man, not beholden to his father or anyone. Those memories ignited a spark within him to finally use his fire and view his quirk as his own. However, to have his mother's soul, spirit, or whatever actually beside him and aid him. If Shoto hadn't been envious of Gaara before, he was now. Oh, that's so sweet and wonderful. Pony cooed, her large blue eyes sparkling, starry-eyed. The girl glanced and noticed Todoroki's stunned expression. Todoroki, what's wrong? Todoroki blinked, surprised, and looked at Pony. It's nothing, Tsunatori-san, Shoto muttered. Are you sure? Pony tilted her head curiously and concerned. You looked upset at first and now surprised. Todoroki's surprise grew upon realizing Pony had caught on to his prior feelings. I see. I'm sorry if I worried you, Todoroki said apologetically. No, I understand and it's okay. Pony waved away the unnecessary apology. I don't want to push and make you feel bad, but you should know that you have all of us. Me too if you need someone to talk to. Todoroki took a moment to contemplate before sighing. I suppose I relate to much of what Gaara felt with his past, Shoto admitted. My mother has been in a mental hospital for most of my life, and I didn't see or know how she was doing for so long. We made up recently. But I guess I felt jealous that Gaara always had his mother with him, even in death. Oh, I see, Pony muttered, saddened immensely at just a peek into her crush's sad past. She thought of what to say for a moment. Hey, and how are you two doing now? Shoto smiled sadly yet lovingly. We're fine, Shoto replied. She forgave me for not visiting and said she supported me in my goal of being my own hero. Pony smiled softly. Well, that's good, right? Pony asked. Shoto turned to face her. I'm sure that she was cheering for you during the sports festival. And even if you couldn't see her or be with her as often if she loves you, then I'm sure she was with you all along, giving you strength in her own way, right? Shoto's eyes widened a smidge at her words and their accuracy. All right, Shoto nodded, smiling as he remembered visiting her after the sports festival. She did indeed watch him from afar, rooted for him and strengthened him, even if by memories and prayers. Thank you, Tsunotori-san. Shoto smiled at her. Pony blushed crimson at how handsome his smile was. It took everything she had not to swoon and smile back. You're welcome, Pony replied cheerfully. Meanwhile, Setsuna and Izuku noticed their conversation and smiled softly and warmly at their friends. This absolute defensive technique is called the absolute defense, Boomstick revealed dramatically. Pretty good name, really. Guess that sand monster didn't help him come up with a more imaginative name, Mount Lady deadpanned. That would imply it would help him at all, or that it could even speak or think like a person, Midnight retorted. Gaara sand is so dense and fast, only someone who can move nearly the speed of sound can pass it, Boomstick said. Ida frowned, worried that if he were ever to face off against the sand-controlling boy for whatever reason or method, he wouldn't be fast enough to avoid his attacks, let alone bypass his defenses. Gaara can also use everyday sand to create defenses such as his sand armor, which encases him in a shell to soften blows, was unveiled, showing a cracked open sand armor and Gaara with cracks all over his face. Unlike his automatic absolute defense, the sand armor is self-created, and requires a large amount of his chakra to maintain. Heh, sounds a lot like my hardening. Kirishima clashed his fists, feeling the urge to have a match of attrition against Gaara. So, while the absolute defense is automatic and requires no input on Gaara, he also has a defensive measure he can use with his own chakra, Izuku muttered. It's almost like one vault door past another to make one impenetrable defense. The only flaw is that it requires so much of his chakra. If someone could get past all his defenses, he would be left vulnerable. Doesn't matter how much sand he or his mommy wants to throw out, I can blow it all away easily, Boomstick boasted. Kind of makes you sound like that one beach bully kicking the kid's sandcastle, Zero said. Zip it, weird arms. Bakuga barked. Gaara's skill with sand is only limited by how much churka he's got left in his system, Boomstick explained. After running low, he could tag out and give Shikaku a turn fighting. However, if the beast is as monstrous as we are led to believe, allowing him to take the wheel would risk the monster attacking innocents and allies as much as his enemies, Tokoyami pointed out. Until a group of crazy people literally pulled the sand monster from his body for good, Boomstick clarified the earlier piece of info. Never mind, Tokoyami muttered. I suppose this means that Shikaku won't appear in his arsenal for the death battle, Shoji figured. A shame, Kendo shrugged. As unstable as it may be, without allies or innocents to threaten, it would be a powerful asset for his fight. That must have hurt. It's gotta be like twice as bad than that night after Chipotle. He died, was pointed out. Wait, say what now? Hagakure exclaimed. Oh, the same then. Boomstick paused yet tried to keep the joke running. Pony Melissa, America has a lot of chipotles. Is it as bad as he says? Katsuna asked. You don't want to know. Pony Melissa and even David Shield all muttered, shuddering. Turns out losing Shikaku was actually a blessing in disguise, was pointed out. After being resurrected, Gaara spent some time re-evaluating his emotional roller coaster of a life. I would be surprised, but his father was already resurrected too, so man, Kyoka shrugged. Though, did he come back as the same kind of zombie as his dad? Ejiro questioned. Probably not, Sato replied. Those two guys seemed to have simply healed him. Inspired by Naruto Uzumaki, he began to truly understand compassion. His attitude changed, was continued as a scene played of Gaara staring awestruck at the famous series protagonist. His people began supporting him. He even commanded the allied shinobi forces during the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Todoroki felt a sense of déjà vu seeing Gaara look at Naruto with those eyes. Eyes full of awe, inspiration, and respect, the same eyes he had toward Izuku at the sports festival. It's yours. Your quirk, not his. Izuku's past declaration echoed in Todoroki's mind. Those words were the final hammer to his repressed memories, leading him to use his fire and whole quirk the way he wanted. Shoto also couldn't help but feel that he didn't solely change how he fought or used his quirk after that. Afterward, he visited his mother and reconciled with her, grew closer to Midoriya and his friends, and acted softer and more understanding with his classmates he previously dismissed or paid little mind to. Gone was the suspicion and cold regard he often gave to people. Shoto wondered if the Shoto Todoroki who won the match against Midoriya was the same as the one who entered the arena. The scarred boy ultimately decided he wasn't. We both changed for the better, Todoroki thought to Gaara, even if the sand-powered character couldn't hear or know of him. And like his late father, Gaara also became Dash. A zombie! Boomstick gasped. Kazekage was finished. Damn! Boomstick cursed. Shoot! Reiko pouted, thinking it would have made Gaara cooler if he was a zombie and still fought as a good guy. Cute. Tokoyami thought. Feats and strengths. Achieved Kazekage rank at 15. Protected Sunagakyun from Daidara's C3 bomb. Sand is faster than the eye can see. Held up a falling meteor. Defeated Rock Lee and Sasuke. Defeated his father, Raza. Regimental commander of the allied shinobi forces. Well, even non-zombie and missing Shikaku, Gaara still retained his powerful chakra and skill over sand, Boomstick continued. Phew, that's a relief. Pixie Bob wiped her brow. I was almost worried that he would have lost that power since it came from that demon. Wouldn't exactly be a memorable fight if he fought as a regular ninja, Mount Lady scoffed. I believe even if it did come from that creature at first, Gaara made that power his own, All Might declared. As Wizard stated, without Shikaku holding him back, the boy can unleash his true potential. Izuku stared up at All Might, reflecting on his mentor's words. Izuku recalled his training under Gran Torino and the elderly hero's words that his admiration of All Might was a shackle limiting his true potential. For the most part, Gran Torino was right, and in the moments Izuku fought as himself and not as All Might, he found that he excelled. From creating full cowling to shoot style to Air Force and now Black Whip, Izuku felt like his own person. His own kind of hero, unshackled by having to live up to All Might's example and style. Izuku smiled, a sense of pride and confidence welling in his chest. In their fight, Gaara was so powerful. His father mistook him for Shikaku itself, despite the sand monster being long gone, was noted. Gaara is stronger and smarter than ever, all thanks to his mother's love, Boomstick said, his tone shifting fondly and sadly. I miss Mama Boomstick. Aw, Mina, Hagakure, Pony, and Kinoko all coo. Few can withstand the overwhelming power of this sand shinobi, was declared. Or Mama Boomstick's cooking. Hey! Boomstick exclaimed, offended. You're uninvited to Thanksgiving. I never was laughed. Exactly, Boomstick muttered. I guess Mama Boomstick's cooking must be like a day of Chipotle too. Aways rubbed the back of his head. Any of your moms like that? Meh, my old hag's decent I guess, not as great as my old man though. Bakuga scoffed. No way. My mom's a great cook. Izuku smiled fondly upon thinking of his mother's cooking. The best. For once the nerd's right. Bakuga huffed and looked away. Auntie Inko's the best damn cook out there. She sure is. All Might sighed as he recalled their date nights when the stubborn woman insisted on cooking their dinner instead of going out. All Might couldn't help but admit that Inko's cooking surpassed Nana's. Thanks to that special woman, All Might, against all odds, managed to gain some meat on his bones, even if minuscule at best. Oh really? Mina grinned, the gears of her mind spinning and cranking. Midori, you must introduce us to her sometime. Better yet, invite her over one day. We all would love to taste Mama Midoriya's cooking. Right, girls? Right. All the girls, specifically of the sisterhood, declared, their smiles and grins wide and faintly mischievous. Sure, I can always ask, Izuku stuttered, feeling like he had just stumbled into a trap. Why can't I try? Fat Gum pouted, disappointed. He too wanted to taste just how spectacular this woman's cooking was. Trust me, Fat Gum, you don't want to get in the middle of this. Kirishima chuckled, nervously, spotting how devious and determined Mina was. Agreed. Tamaki shuddered, noticing the same demeanor on Nijire. One day, Konkuro, I'd like to become something precious to others too, not just to be viewed as some hideous weapon. Gaara spoke to Konkuro while the two stood on a cliff overlooking the desert sands blanked by the setting sun's light. Gaara turned his head to glance at Konkuro with a small smile. But as the sands next Kozakage, the quote and smile from Gaara sent smiles onto many of the group's faces, pleased that the boy's life full of hardship and pain did not diminish the strength in his soul, or keep him from smiling. The boy was received fairly well for his impressive control over sand, his endurance and his determination against such a tragic life, and his impressive defensive techniques, though some regarded the boy with cautious looks for his more murderous acts. The next fighter surprised the group because she normally looked young. The girl looked around 12 years old, a few years older than Eri or Kuta. The girl's attire consisted of green and khaki-yellow clothing, from a green and khaki dress with a brown belt by her waist, often accompanied by a golden buckle at the front, to a green and golden hairband with white puffballs by her ears. Her hair was black and usually styled with her hairband to keep most of it in a bun at the back while she let a few strands frame and drape over her face, leading the group to notice her pale, faded eyes. Another interesting note was that while she had green clothing around her ankles and on top of her feet, she left the bottom half bare. She also had green gloves around her wrists and the back of her hand, freeing the rest of her hands and fingers. Toph Beifeng, water, earth, fire, air, began showing shadowed silhouettes of different people bending the elements to their will. In the world of Avatar, these four elements can be wielded by the skill, training, and martial arts of these gifted benders. So, this must be the special attribute of this world, Azui croaked. It's like a world solely inhabited by elemental quirks. It looks amazing, Itsuka gasped, smiling as she watched the benders on screen move and unleash these four elements with fiery ferocity, rigid discipline, flowing grace, and glowing freeness. She particularly liked both the fire and earth ones. But not all of them come in the same size or package, and even the greatest of benders come in the most unexpected places. Boomstick finished Wiz's introduction. I guess that the girl we're going to follow is an earth user, Jiro guessed. Earth bender. As the only child of the wealthy Beifeng family, Toph was kept a secret from the rest of the world. Wiz jumped back in, showing the small child with dull, faded eyes attended to by servants and her wealthily dressed parents. Hidden away, she was pampered and guarded like a fragile child. Her parents were hopeful she could someday become a noble, respected member of Earth Kingdom society. Momo frowned and winced at Toph's story already, though it was much more complicated than the two being from wealthy families. Momo knew she grew up far more privileged than others, but she never wanted to be treated like the pampered princess her parents initially wanted. It took a lot of convincing on her part to have her parents support her decision to become a hero. Her father initially wanted her to take up the family business as the heir to the Yairozu Zaibatsu, and Momo had spent days to weeks arguing with him about how she was capable of doing both the work as the Yairozu CEO and a pro hero while persuading her mother to convince her stubborn father. She was almost pulled out of UA after the attack on the USJ and again following the attack on the training camp. But just as she convinced her parents to let her go to UA, she stopped them from pulling her out of the hero school, though it was hard. Momo sighed as she recalled how protective and stubborn her parents were, where she felt that it would speak more highly of her if she took the regular entrance exam. It was her parents who would not allow that and had gotten her into the recommendation exam, something that would plague her self-esteem and worth following her humiliating defeat in the sports festival and the whispers from passing UA students that she merely got into the hero course because of her wealth. Thanks to Izuku and Todoroki, she got over most of this. The latter boy helped her by revealing that he had voted for her to be their class rep, and pointedly told her that it was because he found her dependable, intelligent, and hardworking. As for Izuku, she still fondly remembered when the boy she would later crush hard on would so confidently dismiss her self-deprecating words and declare, with such ferocity in his eyes, how skilled, intelligent, and amazing she was. Their frequent talks during their study sessions, where both teens would assuage and support the other from their similar self-deprecating tendencies, would only cement what began from their first talk till she was where she was now, forming a literal sisterhood in hopes of sharing the same boy of their affections. But their hopes were pretty much dashed from the moment she popped out, Boomstick noted. See those faded whites? Yeah, Toph's completely blind. My daughter is blind. She is blind and tiny and helpless and fragile. Lao Beifeng yelled while Toph took in his words about her with a bitter frown. Okay, that's going a bit too far there, asshole. Kyoka raised an eyebrow, feeling unknowingly ticked off by the Beifeng lord's words. Momo flinched at Mr. Beifeng's, hearing similar words from her father when Mr. Aizawa came to her family manor to plead for her continued attendance at UA at the dorms. Momo knew her father meant well, and she could tell that Toph's father did too, but she could not dismiss how the man could not see how his words affected his daughter. Izuku would likewise flinch at hearing Lao Beifeng unknowingly demean his daughter. He always looked like that by everyone for being born quirkless. The nicest teachers he had treated him like he was helpless, and most of the others made him feel small with their callous regard toward him, acting no better than former classmates who would bully and mock him. Even his mother, as loving as she was, treated him like a fragile object, like he was made of glass. As much as Izuku felt truly loved by his mother, and knew her words and actions were done out of zero malicious intent, at some point, Izuku felt frustrated with his mother, almost annoyed by how much she pestered him about if he got hurt. Granted, he usually did, but how he returned home with bruises and covered in soot marks every day was little fault of his. However, the one thing that Izuku felt particularly resentful toward her was her answer to him when they came home from the doctor. I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different, his mother said with tears and a tight hug full of love and care, but Izuku felt disappointment and heartbreak. Those weren't the words he wanted to hear, and ever since then, Izuku had formed a barrier between him and his mother, keeping her from the truth of how he was feeling or who bullied him. It was a barrier he felt was always there until the day All Might came to plead to his mother to allow him to continue attending UA. It wasn't until his mother told him how proud he was, how she believed in him and the hero he was becoming, that Izuku felt the resentment vanish. Melissa frowned, looking to the ground with sadness. She couldn't deny that she didn't feel something similar to what Toph surely did. Melissa loved her father with everything she had and appreciated when he trusted her with whatever she worked on in her lab, but it wasn't always like that. For most of her life, she was treated like a princess by her father but watched over meticulously by him. She usually had to sneak her way into his lab because he wouldn't let her in and play with the dangerous tools in there. And she could get why, but she wasn't too naive or idiotic a child to not realize that. Melissa wondered where much of her father's protectiveness came from. Her quirklessness or her mother's death. It wasn't until the levee broke between them that they had a serious conversation and even fought over how he treated her. David Shield was initially skeptical of his only daughter wanting to grow up to be a support item inventor, and Melissa snapped and told her father off for how overprotective he was. It turned out that Melissa was half right. Her father's concerns were born out of the death of her mother, and he didn't want anything ill to happen to her. The two did some talking, enough that they were blubbering messes by the end, but they did reconcile and grow to be the loving, trusting father-daughter duo they were now. Melissa's frown only deepened though. But now, will he still trust and support me if I say I want to be a hero? The American blonde thought. It appears that both Gaara and Toph are united in a similar pain, parental issues, Tokoyami muttered sympathetically. Still, fragile is the last word that I would want to use to describe this chick, Boomstick said. Background. Age, 12, Avatar. /88, Korra. Full name Toph Beifong. Daughter of a prestigious family. Extremely acute senses besides sight. Former police chief. Stage name The Blind Bandit. Eventually retired to the swamp as a hermit. Frustrated by her parents' stubborn coddling, Toph ran away from home at the age of 6 and ended up losing her way in a cave, until she was rescued by some giant badger moles, was revealed, showing Toph meet the giant earthbending masters. Yes, they're badgers. And they are moles. And they're huge. Mineta exclaimed, eyes comically bulging out. What would happen if you would eat a piece of meat from one of those, Tamaki? Nijire asked. Would you gain the traits of both a badger and a mole? Maybe if this creature has the same capabilities and traits as both species. Tamaki shrugged, curious. Both moles and badgers have skills relating to the earth, such as badgers being expert diggers and moles capable of living in subterranean environments. Tamaki began to imagine that consuming material from one of these creatures would give them a mole's sense of smell and the digging claws of a badger. Imagine one of those things burrowing into your home, Boomstick muttered, somewhat disturbed. What kind of pest control do you even call for that? Oh wait, I know. Fire. Koda frowned, pouting angrily at Boomstick's suggestion, especially against such a beautiful creature. Like Toph, badger moles are blind, so they took a liking to her, was explained. Well, how the hell would they know? Boomstick questioned dubiously. That is a good point, Sin raised a finger. They likely have an innate sense of smell capable of telling them that she is similar, Power Loader explained. The way she sniffed them looked similar, so it perhaps found it endearing or familiar to them. And as the original artists of the craft, the badger moles began her training in the art of earthbending. Was unveiled a scene of a badger mole swiping the earth to see and move with Toph mimicking them. A subsequent scene shows Toph practicing earthbending on a small rock and succeeding, with a blind girl smiling with joy and pride. Momo smiled warmly at Toph's joy. It reminded the heiress of the first time she created something, the wonder and joy that her mother said blossomed in her eyes, and the large, adorable smile she had on her face. So, these badger moles are also capable of earthbending, Todoroki said. Would you look at that? Can't believe I got the name right, Jiro muttered, pleasantly surprised. But then if badger moles were the original earthbenders, how could humans learn it? Kaminari scratched his head. Did some human ancestors long ago and some badger moles? You know, Kaminari subtly tried to convey the awkward question with a fist pounding onto his palm. Okay, first of all you, Setsuna gagged. Pretty sure that's not how that happened. Secondly, maybe like how Toph figured it out. Some humans learned how to bend the earth through observing the badger moles and passed on the lessons. However, does that mean that all humans in that world can learn to bend the elements? Izuku muttered as he wrote in his notebook. Also, if badger moles were the originators of earthbending, then what about the other elements? Did they also learn them through animals capable of bending the elements? Would they be regular animals that could bend the elements, or some special hybrid like badger moles? And we lost him, Mina smiled. Yet sweat dropped as Izuku descended into another muttering storm. Nizu chuckled, amused by Izuku's quirky personality. Nizu thought ironically. However, the boy did bring up some interesting points. Could the ability to bend the elements be something that any person can achieve, or is the ability a genetic trait passed down through generations, or even one that can appear at random like a quirk? If the latter were true, then it would be inconsequential. But if the former was right, Nizu pondered whether humans from other realities, like their own, could learn and perform the same bending abilities. Bending arts. earth bending, seismic sense, earth compression, metal bending, sand bending, mud bending. These giant varmints taught Toph how to manipulate rock and stone using movements similar to the Gaara praying mantis martial art, Boomstick revealed. Scenes of Toph's incredible bending were shown. Toph can telekinetically throw, grow, shrink, and alter Earth in any conceivable way, making for some pretty down-to-earth attacks and defenses. Gaara, Kanoko repeated, confused. Gaara is one of the branches of the southern praying mantis martial art, Kendo revealed. It's a form of fighting that focuses on close-range combat with a strong stance, heavy forearms, yet quick hand movements. However, the use of it to move and launch pieces of the earth from a distance is quite ironic. To move a mountain, one must be one with the mountain, Edgeshot sagely said. Oh gee, what wisdom, Miruko rolled her eyes. Now, say it in a way that makes sense. To put it bluntly, Edgeshot gave her the stink eye yet obliged. If you wish to move and bend that which is as immovable as the earth, you must be sturdier and as immovable. Such a martial art that requires a strong stance is fitting. Sturdy, not exactly what I would call this blonde cougar, Mandalay muttered and gestured. Hey! Pixie Bob cried out, offended. The badger moles also taught Toph how to see, was added. Wait, say what now? Cozy Eye blinked. Wait, these ridiculous creatures are also masters of LASIK surgery. Boomstick questioned, surprised. No, Toph does not use her eyes to see. Of course, her other senses are extremely accurate, was clarified. Toph was shown listening to an oncoming opponent accurately. And as a master earthbender, Toph can sense the location of Earth anywhere. Even more impressive though, the badger moles navigate their tunnels using an earthbending technique known as the seismic sense, and Toph quickly picked up on this talent. A scene was shown of Toph sensing the boulder's movements through this technique. It's kind of like sonar. It works by detecting the exact location and movement of a person or object through their interaction with the ground. I feel the vibrations in the earth, and I can see where everything is, Toph told Aang. You, that tree, even those ants. That's amazing. Izuku gasped with dozens of possibilities exploding in his mind. His hand was a blur as he wrote in his notebook, so much so that the students worried they would start to see smoke at any minute. With such a power, she can sense any opponent hiding or figure out secret passageways inside a building or hideout. Nothing can hide from her. And if she can manipulate and bend Earth from anywhere, she can even strike at them and catch them off guard. To turn a disability and turn into her greatness strength is nothing short of marvelous. All Might declared, emphasizing his words by buffing up. Take this to heart, you young zygotes. With persistence, dedication, and hard work, even the most unconventional powers and abilities can be one of the greatest. Mirio grinned wide. When it came to his own quirk, many thought it was worthless because of how it not only made him nude but also blind, deaf, and breathless when in use. His quirk, permeation, allowed him to become intangible to everything from the ground to the air, light, and sound. In a strange coincidence, Mirio realized he had been walking, in a way, in similar shoes or lack thereof to Toph. It seemed to many that he had such a disadvantageous power unfit for hero work. But he never gave up, and neither did the people who supported him, from his father, Amajiki, Nijire, and Sir Night-Eye. And eventually, through the virtues that All Might espoused, Mirio did just that. Mirio turned this seemingly worthless power and made it into one that helped him become the strongest student in UA and a member of the UA Big Three. And while permeation may be lost, Mirio knew that with Eri working hard to train her quirk for his sake, that wouldn't be permanent, and the hero Lemillion would return to fulfill Sir's last prediction. Setsuna sat flabbergasted at Toph's ability, and she turned such a horrible predicament and turned it into an advantage. Given how her quirk worked, even if both her eyes were destroyed, they would grow back in time. Setsuna couldn't imagine having to live without eyesight. It made the reptile-loving girl more appreciative of what she had, and even resolved her to train her other senses better. I am more than just my eyes. I'm the ears, nose, and voice of my class, And I will prove to everyone, including myself, why I got in through recommendations. Setsuna thought with determination. She feels every movement, every footstep, every heartbeat, so precisely, she can even tell if a person's lying, was revealed further. A woman who can always tell when I'm lying. No, thank you, Boomstick said. Kyoka and Shoji also stared wonderstruck at Toph's extraordinary skills and abilities. The two felt linked to Toph as the foremost scouts and individuals with sensory-based abilities. Hell, Jiro could do much the same with her jacks and know if someone is lying if she was close enough. It's how she can easily tell the perverted thoughts and implications behind Mineta's words, or tell that for all his whining, Kaminari didn't harbor any resentment toward her. And while Shoji's ability to listen far was not as extensive as Jiro's, he made up for it with his ability to smell and see far too, the latter a gift he had greater appreciation for now. Rock on, girl, Jiro smirked. Literally, too. You are an inspiration with your skills and training, Toph-san, Shoji declared. I strive to master and improve myself and my quirk to follow your example. Already, both Jiro and Shoji know who they would vote for. Such a power would also be invaluable when interrogating a prisoner, Hawk said, while he smiled at the girl's ability to sense everything around her, something that he could only manage using his feathers. He wished they could do what she could and figure out how to tell when a person is lying. You know, without actually having to try and dissect them with my eyes. Toph is so good at this that even her closest friends sometimes forget she's blind, Boomstick noted. With reluctance, Sokka removed Toph's championship belt from his body and dropped it toward her, only for the blind girl not to know where it was heading and thus hit her head and fell over. Ow! Toph cried out. Sorry, Sokka apologized. That's got to hurt. Sato rubbed his head where Toph was hit. Pardon-moi, but is that a bison of some kind? Oyama pointed out Appa. A giant six-legged bison with a downvote on his head. Zero scratched his head, utterly confused before accepting. Sure, why not? How is this any weirder than the earth-bending badger moles? The next thing you'll tell me is that thing can fly, Kaminari muttered. But don't worry, they're reminded. Boomstick jokingly excused her friend's carelessness. Well, as long as she doesn't take it too personally, then there is no harm, Ryukyu shrugged. Girl looks tough as nails, and then some, of course she'll be fine, Miruko boasted. Of course, she wouldn't let something like words or a lapse in memory get under her skin. Izuku looked up at Miruko with curious eyes. Miruko stood as one of Izuku's favorite heroes, not on the same level as All Might, his idol and now mentor, but somewhere along the same lines as Lady Nagant before her fall. Izuku found Miruko to be one of those heroes who didn't care about popularity or fame, always focusing on doing her job as a hero and letting her actions speak for herself. It was something that clicked right for Izuku, something he wanted to emulate like All Might's comforting smile. But Miruko also had strength and confidence, things foreign to Izuku in the past like Bakugu and humbleness. In ways, she was like Kaken, but somehow better because while she may talk trash to her enemies and come off as arrogant, it was never to the detriment of innocence. When things got serious, she took it seriously and would stop at nothing to defeat the villains and save civilians. Her confidence, Izuku found through articles and polls, made citizens more at peace and hopeful, her confidence and bravery like a shining moonlight that gave people hope like All Might. She was almost everything Kaken was except she wasn't a bully, which made her immediately better in Izuku's book. And a woman, an amazing, attractive woman at that. Miruko was a long-time hero crush of his alongside Lady Nagant and Midnight. However, while he got over Midnight and his feelings toward Nagant were still complicated, Izuku accepted that he may not have gotten over this crush. And yet, Izuku couldn't help but notice that something was off about Miruko's latest comment. Maybe it was because he was an expert on doing the same, but with a slight quiver, the twitch of her eyes or the way her jaw tensed, Izuku deduced that maybe there was more to Miruko's comment, and Miruko herself than meets the eye. In only 6 years, Toph had completely mastered earth-bending, Boomstick continued. She even won the Earth Rumble 6 tournament multiple times under her stage name, the Blind Bandit. A master of such power at such an early age, Cementos muttered wide-eyed. A true prodigy. But Toph didn't stop her training with just earth bending, was jumped in. At first, softer earth proved difficult for her seismic sense. I feel the vibrations in the ground with my feet, but this sand is so loose and shifty, it makes everything look fuzzy, Toph explained and complained to Appa. That might prove detrimental against Gaara, Ibera hummed. It's almost like a complete opposite to Gaara as well, since that poor boy can only control sand and gold dust. Feats and strengths. Reigning champ of the Earth Rumble 6. Invented metal bending. Held up Wan Shi Tong's library. Dueled Bumi to a draw. Trained the Avatar in earthbending. Destroyed several Fire Nation blimps. Created metal bending police force. But she has since demonstrated her mastery in both sand bending and mud bending. Was listed more of Toph's feats and skills. Oh, I suppose I spoke too soon. Ibera blushed embarrassed. She can also change the density of earth from sand to stone and back. Mineta grinned, raising his finger and opening his mouth. And before you start making any density or hardening innuendos, she's 12, was quickly pointed out. Mineta's finger and lips comically deflated and slacked like a leaking balloon. Oh, okay. Boomstick muttered. I'm surprised that you would censor yourself, Mineta, Azui said, staring at him while she covered Aries' ears. After all, didn't you say you couldn't wait to see how Aries was in 10 years? That was a joke and a compliment, Mineta exclaimed. It's not like I was gonna wait around until she is legal or some shit. You'd better not, Izuku muttered darkly, an aura of darkness surrounding Izuku, emphasized by his green bioelectricity. Otherwise, I would be morally obligated to murder you. Beware the anger of a good man, Mineta muttered fearfully. But her greatest achievement is the discovery of an all-new bending art, one thought to be impossible. Metal bending, Boomstick declared. And metal bending. Tetsu did a double take and repeated the word with sweat rolling down his head. By manipulating the earthly composition within, Toph can bend nearly any type of metal just as well as stone, the exception being highly purified metals such as platinum, was explained the process of metal bending. So, it's still a form of earth bending where she is bending the earth within a metal. So metals without earthly elements inside them would be unbendable, Momo analyzed. I wonder whether my regularly created metals would still be bendable. Why yeah, Tetsu chuckled nervously. Say, what about Dash? If you mean whether she could bend and shift your body if you were to use your quirk. Momo finished Tetsu's question. I'd imagine because your quirk revolves around consuming iron to fuel your transformation, your steel body might have earthly composites that she could manipulate. Granted, if she gets close to you, from the looks of things. Oh, good to know, Tetsu shuddered, a cloud of heavy fear bearing down on him. Manly. You okay? Kirishima asked, patting his friend on the back. Toph quickly mastered metal bending, and went on to teach it to others, Boomstick noted. She eventually even founded and led a metal-bending police force in the new metropolitan city known as New Republic City, was revealed, showing Toph as an adult woman in a metallic police uniform and standing diligently and dutifully. Mineta's grin returned, licking his lips at the sight of the now-adult Toph and how she filled out in the front and especially in the back. Tiu and Jiro noticed, the former sighing annoyed and the latter face-palming. With such power over metal, I wonder just how powerful she would be on Island. Melissa questioned. David shuddered as he got bad flashbacks to Wolfram and his team's assault on the artificial island. And that's after conquering Earth Rumble 4 against some of the strongest earthbending masters, holding up a building the size of a castle, defeating an entire army almost single-handedly, and dueling King Bumi to a standstill. And that guy's conquered an entire hostile city by himself. Boomstick listed some of Toph's greatest feats, including enlightening the last feat by showing King Bumi taking back Omashu single-handedly. Damn, Kominari muttered. This chick's super cool. And so is that old dude. Manly, Kirishima exclaimed. Tetsu only half-heartedly fist-pumped, still trembling in fear of Toph. That has to be the most jacked old man I've ever seen, Siro said. Well, aside from All Might. Hey, I'm not that old, Toshinori whined. Toshinori, you are pushing 60, Recovery Girl pointed out. All Might's sweat dropped. Even in her old age, Toph was capable of going one-on-one with the new avatar, and her seismic sense could locate people across the world, Riz pointed out. Around the world, Shoda exclaimed. If that's the case, she could find any wanted criminal on the planet if she were on the same continent. Endeavor narrowed his eyes as he pondered. And if she were in Japan, she could locate the League of Villains and their new followers' bases, the #1 hero thought. She knows when I've lied and where I've been, Boomstick questioned, appalled. Women should not have these powers. Knowing him, he's probably afraid of whatever number of angry exes he got obtaining that power, Mount Lady snickered. At least, this kind of power is in the hands of a good-hearted, responsible woman, Momo noted. Lord knows how horrible it would be if, say, a hedonistic scumbag were to get his hands on that kind of power. Momo and the girls shuddered at the idea of a certain grape-headed pervert with the power to know where in the world they were at all times. I am the greatest earthbender in the world. Don't you two dunderheads ever forget it. Toph confidently declared to her two previous captors before running away by turning the earth into a wave. Toph was received perhaps more favorably and positively than Gaara, though it was likely to happen when she wasn't a previously morally ambiguous ninja with a demon in their stomach. Her young age brought looks of concern from the older adults, yet her strength and mastery over her abilities, plus her resilience and way to turn her blindness into a strength, brought encouraging smiles and spirits up. All right, the combatants are set, Wiz said. Let's end this debate once and for all. It's time for a death batit Lili, Boomstick roared. After analyzing both fighters, the group used the device's time to search for counterparts to vote on who would win. Those who voted for Gaara consisted of Shoto and Endeavor, both of whom could not ignore the startling parallels to the younger Todoroki, with the elder doubly voting as an act of redemption, in case his thoughts on who Gaara's counterpart was correct, and if he were to be the counterpart to Gaara's father. Tokoyami would also be one of the most prominent to vote for Gaara, given how similar the two were in dealing with a destructive force living inside them, even if Dark Shadow was far more cooperative and friendly than Shikaku. Kurwaro would follow suit in this vote, his only response to why being revelry in the dark. Kirishima and Tetsu would vote for Gaara based mostly on his impressive defenses and strength and endurance in leading such a hard life. Tetsu would also vote for Gaara in fear of Toph, to the amusement of others. Fat Gum would likewise vote for the Sand Shinobi on Gaara's seemingly impenetrable defenses. While Ida gained a bit more respect for Toph's future as a policewoman, he would ultimately vote for the serious-looking Gaara, whose sand abilities seemed swifter, as well for the fact that Gaara could fly with his sand and be safely away from the ground. Edgeshot would end up voting for his fellow shinobi, a fact that Hawks and Maruko would not stop teasing him for, with the former of the two also voting for the more aerial combatant. Kaminari would also vote for the ninja character. Bakugo would vote for Gaara's makeshift flight, defenses, and massive sand control, and Shinso for his version of puppeteering enemies. As for those who voted for Toph, the most notable were Kyoka, Shoji, Momo, and Kendo. Jiro would vote for the little girl for her spunky attitude displayed on screen, her seismic sense comparing nicely to her quirk alongside Toph's great hearing, her badass nature, and her achievements and strength in overcoming her disability. Shoji would vote similarly for Toph's seismic sense and great hearing, but also for her display of great physical and mental strength. Momo's vote was one out of sympathetic relation to their troubles involving their rich background and parents, her skill with metal bending, and her future occupation as a police officer. Kendo loved the martial arts aspect of bending and Toph's southern mantis fighting style, hoping to adopt some of the blind girl's arts to her own, and her badass attitude and power despite her young age. Ojiro would similarly vote for Toph for the martial arts aspect too. Izuku was likewise inspired by Toph's achievements, power and strength at such a young age, and Eri's vote for the young cool girl would only enhance his support of her. This was the same with Mirio, who too felt inspired by Toph's ingenuity to overcome her blindness and become the strongest earthbender, much like he did with permeation. Koda voted for Toph's friendship with the badger moles and her training and skill to have come in thanks to the giant, earth-bending creatures. Setsuna would vote for Toph's skill, seismic sense, and heightened senses, and Hananuki for Toph's ability to change the density of the earth, much like his quirk. Nizu would vote for Toph too, yet kept his reasons tight-lipped, as usual. Pixie Bob and Cementos found it tough to pick which earth-powered fighter to support, but the two would ultimately vote in opposite directions, with Cementos siding with Gaara while Pixie Bob went with Toph. Cementos argued that Gaara's older age meant more potential for greater experience, something that appeared to be a crucial deciding factor for most death battles. Plus, Gaara's way of making more sand was inspiring to pro-hero/teacher. Meanwhile, Pixie Bob voted for the more feminine option, finding that the girl was more versatile, stronger, and liked her tomboyish personality. Multiversal counterparts detected. The device finished scanning. Gaara. Multiversal counterpart. Shoto Todoroki. I had a feeling, Izuku muttered, looking up at his friend. You good? Yeah, thanks. Todoroki nodded at Izuku, smiling softly at him and Pony. You too, Tsunotori-san. Pony. The horned girl stuttered out, blushing. Why, you can call me Pony. If you want, I mean. Pony then, Shoto smiled, blushing slightly. While Pony blushed harder till she went into a daydreaming daze. Shoto frowned as he thought of Kami, his girlfriend, and his conflicted feelings. Endeavor sighed despondently. Whatever hope he had of Shoto not being Gaara's counterpart tossed out the window. As much as he felt that his son shared quite similar traits with the Kazekage, Enji Todoroki still hoped against it, not wanting another tragic counterpart of his son, like Cloud Strife and Ragna. Interesting. Endeavor froze as Nizu's voice was so close. The rodent principal stood on the edge of his chair. He could feel the animal's breath on his ears. It is quite tragic that your son has to have such counterparts with painfully hard lives, especially when it comes to familial drama. The number one hero chilled right to the bone. You wouldn't happen to know why that is, would you, Endeavor-san? Endeavor craned his head slowly, a hard yet neutral look staring back at Nizu's black orbs. The two were in a silent standstill, edging the other on to speak. Finally, Nizu broke the stare down first, closing his eyes with a sigh. Perhaps I am simply seeing things, Nizu replied. Apologies. Excuse me. Nizu hopped off the chair and walked back to his seat, but both hero and hero school teacher knew that whatever Nizu wanted to discuss was far from over. Toph Bifong. Multiversal counterpart. Kyoka Jiro. Wow. She's another you. That's so cool, Miss Kyo. Eri gushed with a wide, blinding smile. Thanks, Eri-chan, Kyoka chuckled, closing her to keep from getting as blind as her counterpart from the girl's Izuku-level bright smile. Despite that, Jiro smiled as she saw her counterpart's face paired with hers. To see such feats and strength earned by a girl 4 years her junior was one thing, but to find out that it was yourself was another thing entirely. Kyoka felt an odd combo of humbling that she wasn't as strong, rich, or successful as Toph, yet inspired to reach even a fraction of her achievements. What about me? Shoto muttered under his breath, slightly jealous that Eri was praising Jiro for her counterpart but not him. Oh, sorry, Uncle Shoto. Even if I'm voting against you, I think your counterpart is cool too. Eri noticed and spoke up to her surrogate uncle. Thanks, Eri. Shoto's foul mood disappeared instantly, replaced with a loving smile toward the innocent girl. So cute. Pony cooed at the interaction between Shoto and Eri. The device went silent, indicating that no more counterparts would be revealed. The video continued to the fight. The video began with Gaara standing alone and silent on a rocky field. A cliff loomed beside him. Mountains rose to touch the blue, partly cloudy sky in the background, and the wind blew past him, moving his hair and coat in the breeze. Ah, he's doing the standing alone, brooding and zen thing that ninjas often do, Hawks pointed out with a shit-eating grin. I know it so well. Edgeshot's comical tick mark returned with a vengeance. All his mental fortitude used to keep from exploding onto the number 2 hero about not being a true ninja, despite his Strider Hiryu counterpart. Across the field, A rumbling shook the earth before a detailed structure made of rock sprouted out of the ground. The structure's door slid open to reveal Toph, the blind earthbending master walking out. "That elevator or whatever it is looks very finely detailed," Midnight muttered, appreciating the artwork of what could only be Toph's creation. "It is a testament to her finesse and accuracy with her bending." "Phew, talk about a rough ride," Toph sighed. "It appears they are using her younger appearance rather than her older versions," Cementos noted. "I wonder if this means she doesn't possess the same strength as those versions." "Meh, even as a girl she was quite the powerhouse," Pixie Bob shrugged nonchalantly. "I doubt it will matter in the end. The little kitten's gonna crush that emo boy." "Emo boy," Shoto muttered, unaware he was considered emo. "You do not belong here." "This is sacred ground," Gaara declared, the sand blowing dangerously around him before his sharp eyes opened. "Leave." "Oh yeah, tough guy. Make me," Toph retorted, taking up a fighting stance while Gaara turned to face her. "Sacred ground disturbing is what they are going for this fight?" Zero questioned. "I mean, dude looks like quite the serious no-nonsense kind of guy. And if she's anything like Jiro, Toph's not gonna like being ordered around," Kaminari replied. "Got that right, Kaminari," Jiro smirked. "Fight." Toph stomped the ground, a boulder rising into the air instantly. Toph punched it toward Gaara before stomping the ground again, summoning two boulders that she likewise punched at Gaara. Finally, Toph punched the ground a third time, creating and headbutting the four created boulders at Gaara. "What strength and speed," Momo gasped. "And martial talent," Kendo smirked. Gaara's sand arose from his gourd, slashing and destroying the first three, before creating a shield of sand from the earth, protecting him from the rest. "Now that's some manly defense," Kirishima exclaimed. He didn't even move a muscle. The sand from the gourd appeared to be the absolute defense technique, though I question whether the shield was too, Ida muttered. "Regardless, Gaara's defenses appear impregnable," Azui croaked. The sand shield opened up, shooting sand bullets at Toph. The earth-bending prodigy stomped the ground again, erecting a large rock, shielding her from the attack. Toph then punched her stone shield, sending it sliding swiftly toward Gaara, turning defense into offense. "Not bad." Fat Gum respected and acknowledged his voted fighter's opponent. Gaara remained rooted in place as his sand flew into the air. As the rock neared his position, time slowed, Gaara's gourd sand swiftly descending, destroying it instantly. "Damn, what a flex," Tetsu muttered, rooting for Gaara to take down this fighter that could be his undoing. "Yeah, that technique and control of his is nice," May grinned, her eyes zooming at the screen. "The defense?" Melissa questioned. "Oh yeah, that too," May shrugged. "I'm talking about what Sandy is doing behind the scenes." "Doing what?" Uraraka asked. "Sandy," Shoto muttered, confused at the sudden nickname for his counterpart. "Oh, I'm sure they will reveal it soon," May waved them away. "Interesting," Gaara muttered. "She commands stone as fluently as I control sand. By the way, I can tell you're using your sand to smash up the ground underneath us for more ammo," Toph called him out, hands on her hips and tapping her foot. Toph's words proved accurate as a subtle flow of sand was spotted, descending to the ground. "Pretty smart for a sandbender." "See?" May grinned and gestured. "Oh, you're right, May. I couldn't catch that," Izuku exclaimed, writing down in his notebook. "Your zoom eyes are as impressive as always." "Ah, shucks, muscles. If you keep that up, I'll keep you in my lab until we make the perfect baby." May grinned dangerously. You mean like a recreated version of Melissa's full gauntlets, right?" Izuku asked. May remained silent, her grin only widening. "All right," Izuku asked again, sweating harder. "Sure, whatever you said," May said, grinning more menacingly. While Izuku shuddered and questioned what she meant, Mineta fumed silently. Not only is he going after the girls from our class 1B, and even girls way out of our league, but also the hottest girl in the support course. Mineta whined jealously. Okay, that's it. I'm sneaking over to ensure that whatever happens at that training session, Midoriya can't get one over on do anything inappropriate toward the girls. And while Mineta plotted to cock-block Midoriya, Kaminari noticed his friend staring, knowing the pervert's plotting face enough to know what he planned to do toward Midoriya, and the girls had to be intervened. Too bad I'm gonna kick your butt before you can use any of it, Toph declared, taking another fighting stance. Toph thrust her fist upwards. Gaara crouched before leaping backward, evading just as a sharp rock erected from his previous position. Gaara leaped again to avoid another erecting sharp rock. Smart, Pixie Bob grinned. Since tossing rocks at him proved ineffective, she switched to attacking from another angle, one that would make it harder to defend with that sand. What better way to trip up a defensive opponent than by forcing him to adapt and move from your advances? Tiger nodded. Todoroki narrowed his eyes, realizing this lesson could likewise apply to him. While he could slide away with his ice, more often than not Todoroki fought in place, unleashing waves of ice and fire to act as both offense and defense to keep his opponents back. With the intense heat of his flames and the field covered in sharp and slippery ice, Todoroki usually had the battlefield advantage. But I need to be more agile in case I have to fight against faster and stronger opponents, Todoroki thought, remembering his battles against Midoriya and Bakugo at the sports festival, both fights of which managed to overwhelm his ice attacks, as well as Chimera at Nabu Island and Leviathan of Hummer Eyes, both of whom also left his defenses in shambles. Gaara jumped again, barely avoiding a third sharp rock. I can't underestimate her, Gaara muttered. Time slowed as he was in the air. Using the body flicker technique, Gaara teleported away. Whoa, did he just teleport? Hagakure exclaimed. No way, he just zoomed away at high speeds. Like a true ninja, Kaminari declared. His hands in a ninja-like pose and a scarf made out of Ciro's tape around his neck and covering up to his mouth. Do I need to reintroduce you to the pan? Jiro asked warningly. Nope. No thank you. Lesson learned. Kaminari yelped, taking the tape scarf off and tossing it back at Ciro. Hey kid, if you ain't using that, can I have it? Hawks asked. Edshot's comical tick mark grew and throbbed harder. Toph stomped the ground, creating a large rock with a clean top. The earth-bending master hopped onto the rock platform and punched forward, sending the rock and herself zooming forward. The blind, rich girl brought out a steel rope tied to her wrist and launched it after Gaara. They didn't say anything about her having Scorpion's rope dart. Ciro blinked surprised. Get over here. She must be using metal bending to launch and control the rope as an extension of herself, Melissa figured. Todoroki nodded, respectfully acknowledging Toph's battle tactics, as well as how she was riding on her element as he did with his ice. Gaara reappeared and stood up. I need time, Gaara said. With a flurry of hand signs, sand swirled and enveloped Gaara in a sphere, shielding him from the outside world. The whip attached itself to the shield of sand, unable to penetrate it. That's one of Gaara's jutsu techniques, the shield of sand, Izuku noted. He must be trying to create more sand and recover energy. But the fight just started. Why would he be running low already? Toto asked. Remember that the dude's sand armor takes up a lot of his chakra or whatever, so he could be building up sand and the stuff to form it, Kirishima pointed out. And it could be that he isn't running low on chakra, but rather trying to prepare and conserve more of it for a longer fight, a strategy that is to his benefit, Momo added. Toph voiced, her blind eyes wide in surprise. The shield rumbled from the side where the steel rope was latched to, and where Toph was heading, spikes jutting out and ready. He means to take advantage of her momentum and impale her, Ida acknowledged, knowing that attack would be quite effective against himself. Whoa! Toph exclaimed, jumping off and detaching the steel rope. Meanwhile, the rock continued its path, slamming into the shield and breaking apart. Phew! Setsuna wiped her forehead. Good thing she reacted quickly. Phew, Toph sighed. Sorry, Grumpy. I'm not ready to be a shish kebab just yet. Preach other me, Kyoka muttered, shuddering at the thought of being impaled on those spikes. Yeah, can't imagine how it feels to be impaled by a sharp object. It must really hurt, Mineta muttered sarcastically. Jiro glared at him, her jacks itching to repay him for that sarcasm, yet withheld herself. Now, grumpy, Todoroki muttered in response to Toph's nickname. Sorry Todoroki, but you were kind of a grump at the beginning of the year. Uraraka chuckled nervously. At least you mellowed out, right? Yeah, I did, Todoroki muttered. Mostly thanks to Midoriya and Kami. Shoto kept that part to himself, not wanting to mention Kami in front of Pony. Performing martial arts movements, Toph created a towering pillar of hardened sand to flatten Gaara's sand shield. Toph roared as she slammed her fist into the ground, the pillar falling down onto the shield. It struck, yet where the pillar hit broke into pieces, yet the shield remained perfectly intact. Whoa! Mirio blinked surprised. At first I was impressed by how she made that large pillar, but then I was even more impressed by how strong Gaara's shield is. Man, figuring out who's winning has me stuck between a rock and a hard place. Mirio, Jay, just no. Nijire pinched the bridge between her eyes, shaking her head. Just no. Come on. Are you really that scared of a little blind girl? Toph whined, annoyed. I'm touched. Damn, she's definitely got your spunk, Jiro, Mina chuckled. Thanks, Jiro grinned. Toph ran at Gaara's sand shield, grabbing hold of one of Gaara's spikes, changing the spike's density to make it much harder. The earthbender broke the spike off and spun it in hand before slamming it into the sand sphere, piercing it straight through. Gaara flew out of the back, groaning in pain. She changed the density of the spike to where it could pierce the shield, Edgeshot said, eyes widening in surprise. Sounds like something you would do, Edgy, Miruko grinned. I can acknowledge one's ingenuity, no matter friend or foe. Edgeshot gave her the side-eye. It is a sign of honor, respect, and integrity. Yeah, sure, whatever you say, Miruko rolled her eyes. Gaara landed on the ground, getting up to his feet. Your eyes, Gaara spoke, cracks forming on his face. Those are not the eyes of loneliness like mine. They are blank. He was forming the sand armor, Tetsu muttered, shuddering as he saw how easily Toph broke through it, and how easily she might be able to break through his. Quite perceptive of him. Snipe tipped his hat to Gaara. Pony pouted slightly when Gaara spoke of his eyes as lonely. The horned girl looked at Todoroki and spotted his hand resting on the armchair. Impressive insight, Gloomsville, Toph acknowledged. I'm digging the whole wearing sand thing though. That's new. Gloomsville, Todoroki muttered, looking down with a saddening, comically depressed aura around him. Oh, come on, Todoroki. You're not that gloomy. Izuku tried cheering up his friend. The hell he isn't, nerd. Icy hot's as cold and gloomy as his quirk. Bakugu taunted. I've seen winter wonderlands warmer and cheerier than him. Todoroki's depressed aura thickened despite Izuku's and his friend's efforts. Pony pouted angrily at Bakugu. Don't be so mean, Pony whined. While the students were occupied with Todoroki's comical depression, Nizu smirked as he noted something that seemed to slip everyone else's minds. Sand gathered around Gaara as he rose into the air on a cloud of sand. The Kazekage began forming and firing sand bullets at Toph. He's bringing himself off the ground to keep Beifong from using her seismic sense to tell where he is, Tokoyami pointed out. Quite the sight, Cementos hummed. A battle of the earth taken skyward. Ironic. Toph summoned another rock, placing it in front of her as a shield. Gaara's sand bullets pummeled the rock until it quickly broke apart. Toph exclaimed in surprise before grunting as more sand bullets kept coming, pelting onto her, leaving scratches as they sliced next to her skin. With her guard broken, Gaara used his sand to pick up Toph and restrain her. Hey, no fair. Toph whined childishly. You need your arms to control the earth, Gaara revealed. I will remove them. Come again. Jiro blinked, surprised and worried. The side of the sand keeping Toph up grew softer and peeled away to reveal the girl's right arm. Slamming her fist onto the rest of the sand, the rest hardened to stone, allowing Toph to break free and land back on solid ground. Again, she changed the density of the sand to her benefit. Hananuki nodded. First she softened enough to free her arm, and then turned the rest to stone. Really? Kozai asked. I thought the first one where her arm was revealed was Gaara trying to cut it off. Same here, Sen nodded. Shoji thought similarly but didn't voice his worry. Unlike himself, his voted fighter could not regrow an arm. Dream on, creep, Toph yelled. It will take a lot more sand than that to take me down. That's the plan, Gaara replied. Performing another series of hand signs, Gaara raised his hands, the air bellowing around him before his desert wave came rushing toward Toph. A tidal wave of sand, Kinoko exclaimed in fright. Izuku blinked, experiencing deja vu with Gaara's latest attack while his mind imaged Todoroki's waves of ice beside it and himself beside Toph. Oh crud! Toph cursed lightly, eyes wide. Acting quickly, Toph created 2 stone pillars to protect herself. As Desert Wave's shadow loomed over her, she began wrapping herself in her steel rope. I get the stone pillars she's using as shields, but why is she wrapping herself in her rope? Uraraka asked. I've got a pretty good feeling why, Izuku muttered. Finally, the enormous wave of sand struck, engulfing the screen in waves of sand. When it cleared, the once rocky plains and nearby cliff were gone, replaced by an ocean of sand. Dear Lord, Ibera muttered, frightened. It is like the wrath of God that buried the city of Tanis into the sands of history. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, I love that movie, Kaminari exclaimed. Surprised it managed to survive the chaos of the dawning of quirks. If it didn't, it would be a great tragedy of pop culture, Setsuna said, shaking her head. That and the Jurassic Park films. Hey guys, fight's still going on, you know, Jiro pointed out, her worry for her counterpart clearing away her patience. Rising from the newly formed desert sea, Toph appeared on top of a rock platform, completely covered in solid steel armor. She used metal bending to turn the steel rope into an armor capable of covering her entire body, Melissa gasped. Kinda surprised that much sand still didn't cut through the metal armor, Mandalay muttered. Sand coffin, Gaara yelled, thrusting his hand outward. Toph's body was covered in a giant coffin of sand. Oh, Koda muttered, remembering the part in Gaara's analysis when he used that technique. And what happened to the person afterward? Yes, crush her, Bakuga roared. Sand burial, Gaara yelled again. Instantly, the sand constricted tightly around Toph. No sounds can be heard coming from inside. Did he just dash? Momo paled. It is done, Gaara declared, turning to face away dramatically. Yes. Finally, you do something right, gloomy ice hot, Bakuga declared. How much you wanna bet that he just screwed us over? Kirishima deadpanned. In 3, 2, 1. Setsuna counted. The ground began to tremble by the pile of sand. Leaping out of the sand emerged Toph, still covered in her steel armor till it shattered, revealing her to be okay. I almost felt that, Toph bragged as she landed. Bakuga paused mid-taunt, his open mouth now looking like a slacked jaw. And in 3, 2, 1, Jiro counted, putting on the earmuffs. What? Bakuga roared, enraged. How? That chick should be a bloody paste. You are confident that Gaara's sand could crush her when she already survived a tidal wave of sand cascading onto her steel armor, Shoji noted. Bakuga's face burned red, though the students couldn't tell if he was red from embarrassment, or if he was too angry to process Shoji's words. That's impossible, Gaara exclaimed, stunned. Are you kidding? Pay attention, Sandy. I'm about to school you, Toph declared. Miruko grinned. Yep, definitely like her style, Miruko said. Toph took a stance and began to yell. As she did, a barrage of boulders rapidly rose around her. Toph launched them all at Gaara, the Kozakage swiping his arms and directing his sand to smash through them all. With the last boulder destroyed, Gaara noticed Toph was no longer where she was. Suddenly, Toph reappeared atop a stone pillar, putting her at equal height to Gaara. 6 more earth columns rose out next to her, surrounding Gaara. Her ability to command and bend the earth is so fast and effortless, Momo gasped, incredibly impressed. Toph launched the pillars at Gaara, who blocked them with the sand swirling around him. Attempting to counterattack, Gaara launched a large sand bullet at her, sailing through the air at high speeds. Here it comes, Todoroki narrowed his eyes. With Gaara unconnected to the earth, Toph can't use her seismic sense to verify where he is firing from. And with how much larger and denser this sand bullet is than the others, it should be able to dash. However, just as it was about to hit her, time slowed and Toph reached out and redirected the sand away from her. Todoroki's thoughts were cut swiftly. His eyes widening, he was stunned. What? The scarred boy gasped. Whoa, whoa, whoa. She redirected it. Kirishima exclaimed. How? I thought she was blind, and Gaara wasn't on the ground. Nizu's smirk widened with glee. The sand looped back around only for the pillars to block the sand for good. Gaara attempted to recover with another attack, but Toph appeared behind him on another rock pillar. The blind master grabbed Gaara by the neck, the shinobi gasping in surprise. Gotcha, Toph said darkly. Oh! Tetsu paled. Cracks began to form around Gaara's body, changing in color and density. She's changing the density of his sand armor. Izuku gasped. What? Ida gasped. The scene panned away to the bright sunny sky above as Gaara let out one last, painful scream as rumbling and cracking sounds were heard and blood splattered up. Jaws began to fall one by one just as others closed and sealed themselves shut to prevent the rising bile from escaping. Others, though, were less fortunate, including one traumatized boy with a redundant name. The scene lowered back to Toph holding onto the cracked remains of Gaara's sand armor, blood leaking from the cracks. The blind girl tossed the Kozakage's cracked visage to the ground, the shattering sounds of porcelain glass heard upon landing. That's how it's done, Toph announced victoriously. Yo, god damn it, Bakuga roared, while other annoyed and disappointed groans and noises were made from the Gaara voters. Shit, seriously icy hot. You had to make me vote for your shitty counterpart and you just had to lose, didn't you? Remind me again how many of your counterparts met a gruesome end compared to me. Todoroki snarked back challengingly. Bakuga paused, realizing he had as many counterparts if not more lose than Todoroki. Still, he couldn't lose the argument. At least some of my counterparts actually won. Bakuga retorted. Oh dash. Bleep, bleep, bleep. Bleep, goddamn, bleep, son of a bleep. Bleep, weasel. Boomstick whined and cursed like an angry drunken sailor, while Toph began making sand angels while Gaara's remains were bloody, unseeable messes inside his cracked armor filled with spikes. Why did another anime character have to lose? Honestly, I can't decide whether Monoma or Bakugu is Boomstick's counterpart, Kaminari snickered. It just keeps ping-ponging between the two. Maybe one is Boomstick in one universe and the other in another, like that counterpart probability thing, Mineta replied. Yeah, but here's why, Wiz audibly sweat dropped, yet began explaining. Gaara's sand is monstrous, and its speed and power could easily obliterate most foes. But with Toph, it's another story. Really? She's freaking blind for God's sake, and he can fly, Boomstick pointed out. Yeah, I was confused about that too, Kirishima nodded. Did she just hear it coming and timed it perfectly? It is more than that, Mr. Kirishima, Nizu spoke. I believe they are about to reveal the truth. Oh ho ho. In the official behind-the-scenes extras of the Avatar Book 2 DVD we found this. Wiz displayed the information on screen. A small caption on the screen saying, "Did you know? Toph can feel the earth even if it isn't connected to the ground. Toph can feel the earth even if it isn't connected to the ground." Oh, Kirishima voiced through his stunned face. That makes sense. I guess. It's the same with my mud golems, Pixie Bob smirked. They can be far away from me, even past the range I can affect the ground. but I can still feel and control them to attack you little kittens. So, despite being levitated by his sand, since it's still made of earth, Toph could sense where he was and whatever sand was coming at her. Izuku analyzed. Toph is tough, but her real strength lies in her precision and technique. And with her earth-bending and seismic sense, Boomstick admitted. She could see Gaara's attacks coming the instant they began, regardless of if he was in the air or how fast they moved. And with her incredible hearing, there is almost no way you can sneak up on her. Jiro nodded, impressed. Way to go being awesome, other me. Took the words out my mouth, Kyoka-sen. Izuku smiled at her. Thanks green, Jiro stuttered, her cheeks burning red. And while Gaara's chakra-infused sand is controlled by his late mother, it's still sand, was pointed out. Just like in an earthbending duel, Toph was able to influence it long enough to misdirect or block attacks, or change the density of the sand to stone or solid earth, elements that Gaara would have no immediate control over, Kendo noted. Gaara also couldn't take control of Toph using his sand puppeteering skill as easily if she could likewise control the sand, Shinso added. Also remember, Gaara added his father's gold dust to the mix, giving Toph 2 different bending options, just in case, was added. Unlike platinum, gold contains traces of iron and copper and can be metal bent. Oh, so his father screwed him over even after death, Kamakiri summarized. Or second death. Endeavor couldn't help but flinch. To top this off, Gaara keeps himself covered in his sand armor, so Toph could always sense where he was, Boomstick noted. And while Gaara's sand armor can be as strong as metal, so is Toph when she covers herself in metal. So, even if he had a manner of flight without the use of any earthly materials, his strongest defensive tool made stealth impossible for him, Ida sighed. And it specifically stated that the sand armor uses up a large amount of Gaara's own chakra, not his mother's sand, was stated. So, when he ran low on chakra, it became difficult to maintain. Thus, Toph had no problem turning Gaara's greatest defense into his worst weakness. Even if the mother sand was harder to control, it didn't matter as long as Toph could grab onto Gaara and command the very earth he was covered in, Izuku said. Ha! Guess the true sand coffin was the one he had on him always, Setsuna snickered. Todoroki sighed, realizing just how foolish that decision was in hindsight. When reflecting on his past, Todoroki felt lucky that none of his classmates or enemies had a water-controlling quirk that could take control of his ice, especially when he ran around in his first hero suit. Todoroki could only shudder at how the same fate could have befallen him if a water quirk villain was ruthless enough to turn the ice covering his body against him as Toph did to Gaara's sand armor. Though, in the end, it matters not how much sand or earth they can command, how durable they can be, or even how skilled in their crafts they are, was continued. As King Bumi said, the key to earthbending is to wait and listen before finishing with a decisive blow. Wise words, Cementos nodded. Though my fighter may have fallen, I will take these lessons to improve myself. Remember kids, it's never too late to learn a few new tricks, Snipe said. Even we teachers and pros can always learn a thing or two. Gaara couldn't stand up to Toph, haha. I know you're floored, I really ground that one in, didn't I? What can I say, it's my earthly delight. Boomstick kept making pun after pun. Ugh, the real question we should ask is whose puns are the worst, Boomstick's or Mirio's? Nijire groaned. That is quite the Toph choice, Mirio grinned. Boo. Bad Uncle Mirio. Eri booed her surrogate uncle. Ugh. The winner is Toph Beifong, Wiz groaned. No need to gravel about it, can't we just bury the hatchet? I'm out. Boomstick kept punning in the distance. Just stop the both of you, Nijire whined. In the end, the group clapped for a well-fought death battle and accepted the results, even if some were more bitter about their chosen fighter's defeat. While Todoroki accepted words and phrases from the group like "well fought" and congratulated Jiro for her counterpart's victory, he felt a hand placed over his. Todoroki blinked, surprised, turning to see that the hand in question was from Pony, who smiled at him. I wanted to say that I don't find you gloomy or grumpy. I think you are kind, sensitive, and cool. Pony giggled at the last word. And you don't have to feel like you are alone. We are all here for you. I am here for you. Todoroki stared at her, stunned by her words. Slowly though, Shoto smiled warmly at her. Thank you, Tsunotori-san, Shoto nodded. Pony, the blushing girl pouted, reminding the scarred boy. Oh, right, sorry, Shoto apologized. Pony-san. Better, Pony smiled brightly. Maybe the loss isn't so bad, Shoto thought. Deja vu. Azui thought as she stared at the scene between Todoroki and Pony. Next time on Death Battle, Boomstick announced. A pair of legs stepped forth and stood dramatically toward an office worker. Words appeared afterward on a black screen saying, "You thought he was unmatched." The scene shifted back to the man, who was shown wearing a dark coat, green dress shirt, dark pants, and a cowboy hat, giving the man a Western vibe to him. The man raised his head, showing his bearded, rugged face. "You thought he had no equal." More words appeared. The screen showed another image of the bearded man before it shifted to a man in a white GI with black hair. "You never met Sagata." "No way," Kirishima gasped, the edges of his mouth twitching as they rose. Scenes began rapidly playing of the two men in all their glory, including sneak peeks at the upcoming death battle, with the words, "You will know his name. Chuck Norris versus Sagata Sanshiro." "No way," Kirishima exclaimed super loudly. "Ugh," Jiro groaned, putting on her earmuffs too late. "Let me guess, manly." Of course. These two guys were living badasses back in the days before quirks, Kirishima said, so excited he was bouncing in his seat. "So, they are regular people that existed in our world before?" Momo asked. "I wouldn't call them regular, but they sure were real," Kirishima answered. "Play the video. Play the video." As the 1A students held Kirishima back in his seat, keeping the faux redhead from tackling Mei for the remote, Mizu gave the salmon-haired girl the green light, and with that, Mei pressed the play button.